Have you ever noticed that the harder you try to stop caring about someone, the more obsessed you become? The more you tell yourself, "I need to move on," the more your mind circles back to them like a moth to flame. What if I told you that this isn't a sign of weakness or emotional immaturity, but reveals one of the most profound truths about how the human psyche actually works, and that fighting against this natural process is exactly what keeps you stuck? Don't forget to like and subscribe to dive deeper into the hidden psychology that shapes our lives. We've all been there. Maybe it's an ex-partner who treated you poorly, yet you find yourself checking their social media at 2 a.m. Perhaps it's a friend who consistently disappoints you, but you can't seem to create healthy distance. Or a family member whose approval you desperately want, despite years of emotional neglect. The conventional wisdom sounds reasonable enough. Just let go, focus on yourself, cut contact, and move on. But here's what nobody talks about. The more forcefully you try to implement these strategies, the more powerfully your psyche seems to rebel. You end up in an exhausting internal war, fighting against parts of yourself that feel absolutely essential to who you are. Most advice about emotional detachment treats the mind like a computer, as if you can simply delete files or install new programs. But Carl Jung understood something revolutionary. The psyche doesn't work through suppression or willpower. It operates through integration and understanding. When you try to forcefully detach from someone, you're often fighting against unconscious processes that serve a deeper psychological purpose. Think about it this way. If detachment were simply a matter of conscious choice, why would it be so universally difficult? Why do intelligent, self-aware people find themselves repeatedly drawn back to relationships that clearly don't serve them? The answer lies not in our weakness, but in the sophisticated, often hidden ways our unconscious mind tries to heal itself. Jung introduced a concept that revolutionizes how we understand emotional attachment: projection. When we become intensely attached to someone, especially someone who triggers strong emotions, we're often projecting disowned parts of ourselves onto them. That person becomes a carrier for aspects of our own psyche that we haven't yet integrated. Consider the person you can't detach from. What qualities do they possess that create such a strong pull? Perhaps they're confident in ways you wish you could be, or they represent a freedom you've denied yourself. Maybe they embody qualities you were taught to reject, like selfishness, spontaneity, or emotional intensity. When someone carries our projections, losing them feels like losing parts of ourselves. This is why traditional detachment advice often fails. When you try to just let go, you're essentially trying to abandon parts of your own psyche. Your unconscious mind resists because it intuitively knows these projections contain vital information about your wholeness. Research in attachment theory supports Jung's insights. Our earliest relationships create internal working models, unconscious templates that shape how we connect with others throughout our lives. When someone triggers these deep patterns, the attachment system activates with primitive intensity. You're not just dealing with feelings about this one person, you're engaging with ancient survival mechanisms designed to keep you bonded to caregivers. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes perfect sense. Humans survived through connection, not isolation. Our brains developed sophisticated systems to maintain bonds, even when those relationships became complicated or painful. The part of you that can't let go isn't broken. It's following ancient wisdom about the importance of human connection. But here's where it gets fascinating. Jung believed that every relationship, especially difficult ones, serves the individuation process, our psychological journey toward wholeness. The people who trigger us most intensely often carry the keys to our own development. They show us what we need to integrate, heal, or understand about ourselves. Here's the counterintuitive truth that changes everything. Real detachment doesn't come from pushing someone away. It emerges from fully understanding what they represent in your inner world and reclaiming those projected qualities for yourself. Jung called this process withdrawing projections. Instead of trying to stop caring about someone, you explore what caring about them reveals about your own unmet needs, unexpressed potentials, or unhealed wounds. This isn't about blame or analysis paralysis. It's about profound self-discovery. Let me share what this looks like in practice. Sarah couldn't detach from her ex-partner, David, despite knowing the relationship was toxic. Every attempt to move on led to obsessive thoughts and the irresistible urge to reconnect. Through Jungian exploration, she discovered that David carried her projection of vitality and spontaneity, qualities she'd suppressed in her highly structured, responsible lifestyle. The attachment wasn't really about David as a person. It was about the part of herself she'd disowned. As Sarah began to integrate her own capacity for spontaneity and aliveness, her compulsive attraction to David naturally diminished. She didn't have to force detachment. It happened organically as she reclaimed her wholeness. This is radically different from forced detachment, which often creates what Jung called shadow projections. When you try to push someone away without understanding the psychological dynamic, you may end up projecting your own rejected qualities onto them. They become the bad one while you maintain an artificial sense of superiority or victimhood. True detachment involves what Jung termed holding the tension of opposites. You can simultaneously acknowledge your connection to someone and recognize that the relationship isn't healthy for you. You don't have to make them wrong or yourself weak. You can hold the complexity of human psychology with compassion. Many people resist this approach because it seems to require more engagement with the person, not less. But here's the paradox. When you stop fighting your attachment and instead explore what it teaches you, the compulsive quality naturally transforms. You may still care about the person, but from a place of wholeness rather than neediness. So how do you actually apply these insights? The process involves what I call conscious attachment, fully engaging with your connection while simultaneously working to understand its deeper meaning. Step 1. Map your projections. Instead of trying to stop thinking about this person, get curious about what specifically draws you to them. Write down the qualities they possess that create the strongest emotional charge, both positive and negative. These are likely your projections. Ask yourself, how might I develop these qualities in myself? What would it look like to integrate their confidence, creativity, independence, or even their ability to set boundaries? Remember, you're not trying to become them. You're reclaiming disowned parts of yourself. Step 2. Dialogue with your attachment. Jung was famous for encouraging people to have conversations with different aspects of their psyche. Try writing a dialogue between the part of you that wants to detach and the part that feels compulsively attached. What does each part need? What is each part trying to protect? Often you'll discover that the attached part isn't just being difficult. It's trying to ensure you don't abandon important qualities or needs. Honor this wisdom while also acknowledging the legitimate concerns of the part that seeks freedom. Step 3. Practice active imagination. This is a core Jungian technique. Instead of trying to eliminate thoughts about this person, engage with them imaginatively. Visualize conversations where you reclaim your projected qualities. See yourself embodying the characteristics you've been seeking through them. This isn't about fantasy or wishful thinking. It's about rehearsing psychological integration. Your unconscious mind learns through imagery and experience, not just rational analysis. Step 4. Embrace the gradual process. Real psychological detachment unfolds slowly, like seasons changing. There will be days when the old patterns feel overwhelming, and days when you feel genuinely free. Both are normal parts of the integration process. Jung emphasized that individuation, becoming who you really are, is a lifelong journey. Each relationship that challenges you offers materials for this development. The goal isn't to become invulnerable to attachment, but to attach more consciously and completely. What life looks like when you integrate this understanding. You find yourself naturally less reactive to this person's behavior. Your sense of self doesn't fluctuate based on their attention or approval. You can appreciate their qualities without needing to possess or control them. Most importantly, you've reclaimed parts of yourself that were unconsciously given away. The challenges you might face. This approach can initially feel more intense than simple avoidance. You're engaging with psychological material that's been unconscious, which can temporarily increase emotional volatility. Trust the process and consider working with a therapist familiar with depth psychology if the emotions feel overwhelming. Here's what Carl Jung understood that most people miss. The goal of psychological development isn't to become detached from life, but to attach more consciously and authentically. When you stop fighting your attachments and start learning from them, they become teachers rather than tormentors. The person you can't let go of isn't your problem. They're your curriculum. They're showing you exactly what you need to integrate to become more whole. This doesn't mean you should stay in unhealthy relationships, but it does mean you can transform your relationship to attachment itself. So I challenge you to try a different approach. Instead of asking, how can I stop caring about this person? Ask, what is my care for this person teaching me about what I need to develop in myself? Instead of fighting your attachment, get curious about its deeper meaning. When you understand that every intense emotional connection is an invitation to greater self-knowledge, relationships become less about finding completion in someone else, and more about discovering the completeness that already exists within you. What patterns of attachment have you noticed in your own life? What qualities do you find yourself repeatedly drawn to in others, and how might those reflect parts of yourself that are asking to be integrated? Share your insights in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.